All right, Dr. Janet Smith, I think we've got you with us now. Welcome to The Simple Truth. How are you today?
Yeah, it's good to be on. Thank you.
Thanks for being here. And again, we invited you on to talk about this article, not knowing if we'd see white smoke today, if we'd see a Holy Father, who that would be. We've got one now, and he's named in the article, "The New Pope Must Purge the Church of the Lavender Mafia," that you published just a couple days ago on crisismagazine.com. Thank you for doing it. A very important article. But I want to ask you, I guess, your thoughts about the new Pope. It's a little bit tricky in the sense that we want to, I guess, give a little bit of a I don't know, some grace to, I don't know if we would say a period of a honeymoon to a new Pope coming in or something like that. But at the same time, I don't think there's anything wrong with being honest about the background and about things to keep an eye on and where we currently stand while we do what is faithful in praying for our new Pope and hoping for the best in his heart and in his pontificate as it begins to get underway. But he's named not in a favorable way here in the article. What are your thoughts, I guess, as we now have Pope Leo XIV?
You set that up very nicely, and it is difficult and, possibly some degree wrong to come out negatively about a new Holy Father before he's had an opportunity to get his feet wet in any sense. But there are things, as you said, the truth is important. There are things we've already known. And all I can say is that some of them, I'm reading all day long, just been getting text from people and information about different things he's said and done in the past and thinking these will be indicative of how he'll act in the future. That's a fair assumption, always. But the graces of the office are extremely powerful. Bishop Strickland himself has said many times that before he became a bishop, no one would have said that he was a courageous man. Right? He was sort of a company man. And then when he became a bishop, the Bishop of Tyler, Texas, the graces of the office hit him powerfully. Right? What his new job was to defend the deposit of the faith. And he started praying hours more than he did before and became a very brave and courageous witness to the teachings of the church and continues to do so, continues to stand up and speak strongly for these. So it's possible that the graces of the office will guide Leo XIV in the right direction. Some of us are very encouraged that he wore traditional papal garb, that he chose the name Leo XIV. Some of us on the more traditional side associate Leo XIV as being a great follower of Thomas Aquinas. Those more on the left side of the church associate Leo XIV with the encyclical Rerum Novarum. And I think there's no justice to considering that document a kind of favorable statement towards communism. Some people take it that way. So we have yet to see what those things really mean and what they signify. A lot of people are going to be talking about them. One of my major concerns about Leo XIV, former Cardinal Prevost, were the reasons that he was mentioned in that article about the Lavender Mafia, which includes the problem that bishops, cardinals, popes have been covering up for sex abusers in the church. It's not just that. It's a kind of a dominance of men with a homosexual orientation and possibly active homosexuals who have got a very powerful position in the church. Our concerns about Prevost are that there are several occasions in his past where he seems to have covered up for priests who have abused individuals. One was 3 sisters in Peru who accused him over a period, a priest in that diocese of having abused them. And they do not believe that the diocese took it at all seriously. They were assured that canonical procedures had been taken. They never had any evidence of that. They were never interviewed. Let me say they were never interviewed. I don't know how ever the church can claim that an investigation has been done when there's never been an interview. I've dealt with a victim, another victim here in the United States, who reported a priest. And she was never interviewed. In her report, she said there was another woman there who was a young girl who was also a victim at the same time. They never made any attempt to determine who that other girl was or what testimony she might have. So, and there's a couple other instances where when he was in Chicago, there was a priest who had been accused of abusing boys, and he was permitted to live in the Augustin residence over which Prevost was the master, and it was very near to a school. So these things, there's a number of things that just don't line up well in that respect. So as I said in that article, that until we rid the church of these homosexual men who, and again, I said in the article, and I sincerely mean it, I didn't say this in the article is true. I do have a very soft heart for those who suffer same-sex attraction. I think it's really an affliction and a really miserable affliction. But sympathy doesn't lead to giving people power and influence, especially power and influence in the church. And I believe such men have been an enormous obstacle to progress in the church. And they don't belong in the church in the sense of holding offices, being bishops, priests, cardinals, etc.
Yes, Dr. Janet Smith is with us in the article. Yeah, you do a great job of unpacking that and explaining why. I do want to make sure that everybody knows where they can find the article. The New Pope Must Purge the Church of the Lavender Mafia, crisismagazine.com. You can read it in its entirety there. And Cardinal Prevost is mentioned in the article, specifically in this context. It says, it is impossible to estimate how many of the cardinals participating in the conclave have either been accused of being active homosexuals or of covering up for homosexuals. SNAP, the Survivors Network of Those Abused by Priests, submitted to Cardinal Parolin a list of 6 of the Papal cardinals who have either enabled or concealed sexual abuse committed by Catholic clergy. Erdo from Hungary, Farrell from the United States, Fernandez from Argentina, Gretsch from Malta, Tagli from the Philippines, and Prevost from the United States. And it says a rainbow cloud hangs over the heads of the cardinals from the United States, either for their own suspected homosexual activities or for cover-up of abusive homosexual priests. So again, I want to bring everything back to let's pray for our new Holy Father. Let's pray for Pope Leo XIV. That is our duty, and we do not know what's going to take place in his pontificate, and we should hope for the best and pray for him. And I think Dr. Smith laid it out well that the office that can change people, and the graces of conversion that are there are certainly present. And so we do pray that they will take hold, and that he will be a very holy pope who does many wonderful things. At the same time, I think it is good to report on the facts as we know them to this point. And one thing that did concern me today, I will say, in just the experience of watching the new Holy Father come out and all of it unfold, is that I particularly noticed Cardinal Supich on one of the side balconies with a big smile on his face. And I don't know that I don't remember everybody else that was out there, but who I didn't see Cardinal Burke. I didn't see Cardinal Sarah. I didn't see them up front or anywhere to be found. But there was Supich front and center. I'm not sure who else was up there, but he's the one that really caught my eye. And to me, that's not a very good sign. But again, we stay hopeful. We stay prayerful. Anything that kind of caught your eye in everything today with respect to this topic, that the new Pope must purge the Church of the Lavender Mafia? Just anything else to say on that?
Well, the famous Father James Martin has come out with a very strong endorsement of Leo XIV. Again, that's not an endorsement that makes me happy. I didn't see one, as you said, from Burke or Sarah or a whole set of cardinals we would have liked to have seen an endorsement from. I mean, they will be circumspect and they will wait. They will give him every chance. But again, if you know people by their friends, that's very discouraging. And there was a very interesting blog put out by Ed Penton a day or two ago, maybe just yesterday. Ed Penton, the day before I think it was the day before the conclave started. He's one of the best observers of the Roman scene. He writes for the National Catholic Register and other publications. He's been in Rome for years. And he had a chance encounter with Father James Martin and Austin Ivervey, who's a journalist from Britain. And Austin approached Ed quite angrily and said, why is it you're trying to destroy Cardinal Prevost's chances to be the next pope? And I'm astonished to me that would be the thing that would come out of his mouth. You know, it sounds as if there were some sort of campaign for Prevost that he thought Penton was trying to sabotage. I would say that one thing that struck me when I saw Leo the 14th stand at the balcony is how unsurprised he seemed, how programmed he seemed, how he had a very polished speech that didn't seem to have the kind of just sort of newness to it that it would for someone who might be surprised that he was named the Holy Father. So I do wonder if there was quite the campaign for him even before the conclave began, which is not unusual, but still it's not supposed to happen. You're not supposed to campaign for an individual. You can say you would like a Holy Father who might do X, Y, and Z. And then, of course, you might mention the names of these people would do X, Y, and Z. But actually to hold a campaign for someone is not in accord with church practice and policy.
Yeah, very interesting. I didn't know Italian, and I was watching, I think it was the AP feed, which was pretty good in many respects, and just showing you the visuals and not having all the commentary. I did watch some of the EWTN commentary afterwards as well, but just seeing it and just kind of taking it in, and he was speaking in Italian, so I don't know Italian, but I haven't read what Pope Leo the 14th said on the balcony yet, but I did hear from the commentary when I went to it, one thing that they were saying is that he mentioned a few times about building bridges, which immediately, as soon as I hear that, my mind goes to the book by Father James Martin. And Father James Martin he tweeted something out saying that this was a brilliant choice as well. So those things are concerning. Again, we pray for conversion for us, for Pope Leo the 14th, for everybody. We're going to hope for the best and keep prayerful. But again, we need to notice what is real, what is good and what is bad, be sober-minded about it, and be faithful regardless in every moment. But you do, in the article, you ask the question here, why is purging the Lavender Mafia the key task of the next pope, and why is it so out of reach? And again, you define the Lavender Mafia here. This is not just like some slur. It is descriptive of what we're talking about, which is, you define it here, the homosexual priests and bishops who run the church. And you say it's arguably the most important and most difficult of all tasks a new pope will face. You give a lot of evidence of this throughout the article. And then you ask that question, why is purging the Lavender Mafia the key task of the next pope? Why is it so out of reach? What can you share with us on that, Dr. Janice Smith?
It's so important because, unfortunately, as I also speak of in the article, is how this came about. And it came about through the exodus of, there may be many causes, but these are a cause or certainly a sign of a reality that tens of thousands of priests left the priesthood after Vatican II. And these were mostly heterosexual priests who believed that the church was eventually going to approve of married priests and that they could return. So they left and got married. And who did that leave behind but homosexuals? It's also true that, I don't believe I said this in the article, I should have, that with the sexual license that came into the culture in the 60s with the contraceptive pill, and all of a sudden sex outside of marriage was fine, and basically people concluded that if heterosexuals can have non-procreative sex, if sex isn't designed for babies, then what's wrong with homosexual sex? If you have someone you love who's the same sex, why couldn't you have sex with them? Because sex doesn't need to be procreative. All sorts of contributing factors. And so there was a push, of course, for homosexual marriage. At the same time, in the 60s, homosexuality was still not something that you would come out as being homosexual. And so for Catholic men who didn't want to answer to their parents or their grandmother why they weren't married, the priesthood was a great place to hide. And so in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, there was just this influx of homosexuals into the seminaries and an exflux, if you will, of heterosexual men out of the seminary. In fact, they weren't welcome. They were made to feel very uncomfortable in the seminary. And if they were to report sexual activity between their homosexual fellow seminarians, or sex between the formation staff or the faculty or the administration and seminarians, they were kicked out of the seminary. They were told to mind their own business. Who were they to judge? And so over the decades, the number of ordained heterosexual men became lower and lower. The number of ordained homosexual men became higher and higher. And I don't know that I use this word in the article, and I should have. Blackmail has become sort of the coin of the realm within the Catholic Church. someone who's been an active homosexual in seminary, people know. So people could blackmail him. So he appoints people who would protect him, or maybe people who could also be men who could also be blackmailed. So there's this, I'm not certain blackmail per se is happening, but the imminent possibility of it, the fear of it, is something that I think explains a lot of decisions. I will appoint this man because he will protect me, and I have something on him if he should come against me. And so there's this all of a sudden, this really, I mean, the word icky is kind of icky in itself, but this really icky feel of what the heck is going on. We often ask, why was this priest promoted? Why has this priest become the vice chancellor of the diocese or the vicar of clergy or whatever? And these other very devout, good priests are either being canceled or marginalized in the church. There was at one point, I think it's still true, if you want to find often, if you want to find the best priests of the diocese, you go look at the parishes that are considered to be the most unattractive for their geographical placement, is often the case, the smallness, whatever. But the very good priests are not getting the promotions. The very good priests are not getting promoted to be bishops. They're all friends, if you notice. They're all friends. There's couple marvelous charts of the number of sort of episcopal offspring that Cardinal McCarrick had. Of course, most of the the top cardinals in the United States are closely allied with McCarrick. That's no accident, all right? It's just no accident. McCarrick did not choose men who were opposed to him and his behavior and his policies. He appointed supporters. And of course, what concerns me is that Prevost was appointed to be the head of the dicastery of bishops, the one who chooses the next round of bishops. Well, I would think that means that Pope Francis appointed him to that position because Pope Francis wanted bishops who would be in his image, if you will. It's not a good sign. It's not an infallible sign, but it's not a good sign.
Report and Montagne's report, collegeofcardinalsreport.com is where you can find it. Again, good faithful Catholic reporters. And when you look at what the summary and then the details about Cardinal Prevost, they mentioned that he was appointed prefect of the dicastery of bishops by Pope Francis in January 2023. So he held that post for a couple years. And also it says that he supported Pope Francis's change in pastoral practice to allow divorced and civilly remarried Catholics to receive Holy Communion. That's obviously troubling, but then it does say he appears somewhat less favorable to currying favor with the so-called LGBTQ lobby than Francis, but he did show mild support for Fiducia Supplicans. So I wonder what you make of that, but also in your article, again, Dr. Janet Smith wrote this article a couple days ago, May 6th, so not knowing who was going to be the new Holy Father. Now we know. But in the article, she writes about whoever it will be, who will be the new Holy Father and this important job of purging the Church of the Lavender Mafia. She writes, among his most important acts will be appointing a wise, savvy secretary of the dicastery of bishops, not knowing that it would be the secretary of the dicastery for bishops, Prevost, that would actually be chosen. And also, it says here, also the dicastery for the doctrine of faith, and then the other dicasteries as well. Nuncios must be chosen with utmost care. The next pope will, however, face fierce opposition from the deep Lavender Mafia, as did Pope Benedict. He will need our prayers and sacrifices. And today, this is maybe a hopeful sign that it is the feast of the anniversary of the apparitions of St. Michael the Archangel, also the anniversary of when Pope Leo XIII introduced the St. Michael prayer after having that famous vision that he had in 1884. So that could be a good thing. I think it's certainly something to at least remind us to pray specifically for the intercession of St. Michael, guardian of the Church, to defend our Holy Father and hopefully intercede for the Holy Father and for the entire Church with respect to the opposition, as you say, the fierce opposition that he will face from the deep Lavender Mafia. Hopefully, number one, he's opposed to it, and number two, that he is able to do what needs to be done in face of the fierce opposition that he will face there from that deep Lavender Mafia, that homosexual network in the leadership of the human element of the Catholic Church. We're going to get back to the phone line in just a minute. If you can give a gift in any way, iCatholic Radio, the mobile app iCatholic Radio, or the stationofthecross.com, or call the number if you can as well, 1-877-711-8500. But I want to keep bringing you this great content with Dr. Janet Smith. Dr. Janet Smith, any other analysis on all of that as we're here today?
I think it's a little bit, maybe a step removed from that, but I was just asked by another reporter before you came on, what I thought might be some good first actions on the part of the new Holy Father. Two or three I can think of immediately. One would be, since we do have concerns about his record for covering up for abusers, is for him to take some swift action against Father Rupnik in Rome, who was accused of abusing 20 nuns that were under his spiritual care. He actually was excommunicated at one point for having given absolution to one of his victims who confessed to him at one time. And that's obviously a canonical offense that priests cannot absolve their victims. And it results in automatic excommunication. Shortly after that, the Holy Father, Pope Francis, lifted that excommunication. And I suppose most of your listeners know, some might not, is he was a very famous artist who worked out of Rome. And his mosaics appear all over the world in some remarkable places, among them Fatima, the JP2 Center in Washington, D.C., the JP2 Center in Krakow. It seems wherever you go, his art is. It's quite ugly, actually, and a little bit scary. I remember seeing it. I went both to the one in D.C., in the JP2 Center in D.C., and the one in Krakow. I was kind of stunned. It's just like, again, kind of creepy. And then it was used, it has been used until very recently in publications that are used to commemorate events in the Vatican on the different pamphlets and prayer mass guides that they put out. A complete insensitivity to victims, even those who aren't his victims but have been victims of sexual abuse, say they find that art tremendously triggering. And to think, anyone who's worked with victims or been following victims, they often find the mistreatment by the church as being worse than the initial abuse, because, of course, they look to the church as being their mother, the bishop is their father, the pope is their father. And when their father and their mother reject them and say, we don't honor your accusations, we don't believe you, and even if we believe you, we just want you to go away because you make so much trouble for us. I think he needs to make quite a dramatic, any statement would be good. Removing him would be good. Dramatically removing him would be even better. Apologizing for the fact that the Vatican has been using his art for long after he's been known to be an abuser, and laicizing him, of course. That would be a big step forward for him, giving a sign that whatever missteps I've made in the past in covering up, it's stopping now. And I'm going to take very seriously and act upon the church's claim to have zero tolerance for abusers. The second thing is I think he needs to, and there are some of these little notes that I get. One of them said that he was actually registered a Republican, and he's been known to be pro-life. Good signs. And one of them said that he's known to have gotten permission years ago to say the Latin Mass when one needed an indult to do so. If he has a little bit of a heart for the Latin Mass, that would go a long way to smoothing over some of the division that's in the church, mending some of the division. Pope Francis had this very curious animus against the traditional Latin Mass and to goers to the traditional Latin Mass. It probably bothered them more than the Mass itself, but those of us who attend it. And we're a small group of people. We are kind of zealous advocates for this liturgy that we found makes all the difference in the world to our experience of worship, a rediscovery of something that we felt was unfairly, unrightly taken away. And if he were just to say, that was a preference of Pope Francis, but I am now going to lift that. The Mass will be it should be widely offered. As a matter of fact, I would love him to say it should be so widely permitted that virtually any Catholic that within, a 20, 25-mile drive could find a Latin Mass or any deanery, there should be at least one church that offers every Sunday a TLM. It's a small group, but it's very possible we're under 2% of Catholics that would like this. Though it's growing all the time, and it's young people who are flocking to this Mass. So if he did those two things, also, we can add them up. If he redid entirely the arrangement that the church has with the church in China, it's extremely important. We've kicked those Catholics under the bus, and that needs to be repaired. If he would reinstitute the Institute for Marriage and the Family in Rome to its original vision of promoting the thought on marriage, family, and sexuality of John Paul II, that would be a huge step forward. There's many others, but those are the sorts of things that you find on people's lists that they would like to see the Holy Father do. I'm not sure any of them are all that, those four that I mentioned are all that controversial. We're going to have all sorts of continuing arguments about immigration, synodality, all of that. Those are truly divisive topics, but protecting sex abusers should not be a divisive topic. Unfortunately, as I've said, the Lavender Mafia is present, and they are the ones that oppose transparency and zero tolerance for sex abusers. Catholics in the pew have no problem. We do not want this in our priesthood. We do not want this in our church. The only ones who oppose it are the Lavender Mafia. So this is where we'll see whether he's got a backbone to stand up to the Lavender Mafia anyway, and then start the process. If you got rid of all the abusers, you've made a really good start. They're not the only ones that are there. Some of the Lavender Mafia lead very private lives, sometimes with fellow priests, but they're not as visible as those who abuse young boys, seminarians, and of course women, girls. Those are the heterosexuals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, terrific and much needed. Very important analysis here by Dr. Janet Smith. Again, you can find the article, "The New Pope Must Purge the Church of the Lavender Mafia," that she wrote, published just a couple days ago, crisismagazine.com. I agree with what you're saying and totally with you on the TLM. We're blessed, my family and I were blessed to have a fraternity of St. Peter Parish, not too far away, about an hour drive, but absolutely worth it. What a gift, what a blessing here down in Southwest Florida, and just phenomenal. And so it is an odd thing that has taken place under Pope Francis. It's hard to understand why, and you do just hope, with the new Pope here, if it's true that he wants to build some unity, and that's, I think, the motto on his Episcopal or crest, or his motto as a cardinal anyway. I think that would be some low hanging fruit to go back to more of what Pope Benedict XVI was doing with respect to the TLM. We'll see. We're just on the first day of Pope Leo XIV, so we'll see how it unfolds. But the prayers are important. Let's be faithful to our role in this and keep those prayers going. Dr. Janet Smith, we'll let you go in just a few minutes, and we won't keep you here as we go to the end of the hour for the on-air spring appeal for the Station of the Cross. But do want to give you the last word here. Take as much time as you like. Any final words that you have for us today? Anything else you want to share with us?
And I think the way you opened it was exactly right, that many of us have been praying ardently for a pope that would repair the damage that we believe Pope Francis has done to the church. Ardently. Well, we shouldn't stop our prayers, all right? We may be disappointed. We may be prematurely disappointed. I don't know. But we need to really dig down, and whatever prayers we were saying, that we would get a pope that would reverse what we believe. I think if Pope Leo XIII is going to be a bad pope, to some extent it means we still might deserve such. We need such most people I know, good Catholics, have dug deeper and deeper and deeper into their faith in this last pontificate. No longer relied upon the Holy Father to sort of be their prop for fidelity in the church. Most all of us discovered we needed to pray a whole lot more, read scripture more, be stronger in evangelization. Don't stop that. Keep that up. And if Leo XIV is not the pope that we were hoping for, if he's not, Maybe he will respond to the grace of the office. We'll get one eventually. We'll get one. We've had some beautiful popes who were spoiled. So just hang on. The church is the church, and Jesus is Jesus, and the Holy Spirit will not leave the church abandoned. But read Isaiah. That's a good place to read the number of times that people got bludgeoned. God's beloved people, the Israelites, they were consistently disobedient and regularly disappointed. And God the Father had to knock them down for a while until they renewed their faith in him. And so we should use this as an opportunity not to despair or abandon our faith, but to renew our faith.